Recording in
I will call the Town of Belgrade Board of Select Persons July 15, 2021 special meeting to order. I don't have a flag handy, so we'll have to say the Pledge of Allegiance without the flag. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll take a motion to open the meeting. And a second. Seconded by Barbara. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 4, 1 absent. All right, the first portion of the meeting is public comment. Does anyone have anything that they would like to bring to the Select Board's attention that will not be covered on this evening's agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move right on to old business. First up, we have discussion and consideration of the 2021 tax commitment. We'll take a motion to open that item.
So be it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't see Rob here. Was he coming this evening, Anthony?
Yeah, he said he would be here, but he was having to interrupt something in order to do so. So, I can walk you through this, or if you want to wait to see if he joins in, we could skip ahead to another item.
So I'll take a motion to table this item until Mr. Duplessis can join us.
So be it.
And a second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we'll table that item for a little bit. Next up, we have a discussion and consideration of issues related to a remote meeting policy. I'll take a motion to open that item.
So be it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 1 absent. Okay. So Anthony, do you want to lead that, or do you want me to read what you provided?
No, I can provide a brief synopsis. So at our last meeting, one of the things that our board members discussed was under what circumstances can a decision maker, that is a board or committee member, participate remotely in a meeting. And really and truly, that you guys have some discretion as to how you want to define that. It was the opinion of the MMA, and she also did seek a opinion from the FOIA ombudsman for the Attorney General's office for the state of Maine that said that, if you were away on work or away on vacation or some such, that you could participate. I really wish Dan, I see Dan and Rob are just now trying to join. So let me admit them. There we go. Hey, Melanie, Rob is interrupting something, as you can probably see there, in order to participate. You think we could maybe go ahead and...
Yeah, I'll take a motion to table the remote meetings policy and go back to the agenda item with the tax assessor.
So be it.
How about I'll make that motion? Moved and seconded. 1, 2, 3. Ernie? Okay,
It looks like,
there's 3. There's a quorum. 3 said yes.
okay.
All right, so we're going to back up and we're going to tackle the tax commitment. All right, Rob, you're in the hot seat.
So do you guys have specific questions that you would like the assessor to answer?
He's muted right now. Are you able to get unmuted, Rob?
I think that's me.
There you
we
go.
go.
Sorry about that. I've never done this on my phone before.
It's a little tricky.
Yeah, it's a little weird. So
Okay, so Rob, what's your recommendation?
I think this is a pretty easy one. After we receive the additional revenue sharing and the state aid education sharing, and with the new value we picked up, we're going to be able to keep the mill rate exactly the same as last year, and have a nice overlay of $86,700. I think our overlay was a little bit bigger, bigger than that last year, Anthony.
It was.
It was.
It was almost twice that size.
That's what I thought. But this is kind of even more than we've had before. But I mean, I'm a big proponent of having a mill rate stay the same year after year after year when we can. And then if we have this little bit of overlay extra that we over and above what we normally see, we have the opportunity of taking those funds at town meeting next year and having them presented to the townspeople to vote to reduce potentially next year's budget to keep the mill rate the same again for a third year in a row. The only thing that we're seeing is the homestead did dip a little bit that we talked about last time we met, but it's only $1,000 or so. So not anybody's going to see any real change in their tax bill at all. So any lowering of the tax rate will be soon forgotten, and that doesn't give us the opportunity to carry these funds forward another year. So I think that I think that's my strong recommendation, just to keep it the way it is.
And the difference between the current year's overlay and what we would be seeing for next year, you don't feel like is going to affect us detrimentally?
Not at all. Not at all. I think that we can that it's 86,000 is something that we know, because if we take our abatements out of there, it's really the only thing we'd be taking out of there. Hopefully, knock on wood, we've had very little abatement action. I mean, with like less than $2,000. So all of those dollars will roll into the general fund for next year's commitment, next year's town meeting, actually, to decide if we want to ask the taxpayers to use that or have that available to use to lower the mill rate or keep the mill rate the same. So I don't think going any lower would be smart, and there's really no sense to go up. That's why I think it's pretty much an easy decision to make.
And just to add to that $86,000, nearly $87,000 overlay, that's about twice what it was 2 years ago. So
right.
Not nearly as healthy as last year, but much healthier than 2 years ago.
Why was it so much higher last year? Why did it jump up so much?
Well, we had the same conversation a year ago about keeping the mill rate the same as it is now. And we really think with everything that was influenced by COVID, we didn't really know what we were going to get. Our budgets were cut down quite a bit to just hedge on what may or may not happen. And when we realized things weren't as bad as we thought they were going to be financially from the state, financially through the town, that we thought that with no increase in that hefty overlay, again, it gives the town more options in that year and in the future to kind of keep things pat another year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and maybe to explain that a little bit further, Barbara, last year we made, I think maybe for the first time, some really significant use of our undesignated fund to cover some one-time cost, which relieved the need to tax quite as much. And so when we kept the tax rate the same, it did produce that overlay that Rob was talking about. And everyone felt it was important to have a larger overlay last year, just because of the financial and economic uncertainty that the pandemic was posing at the time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, does anyone else have more questions for Rob?
I see Jack has his hand up.
Oh, I missed that, Jack.
Yeah, I just had a question. Jack Sutton on the Budget Committee. Say for the last 3 years, maybe the last 5 years or so, do we have an accounting of what the overlay was and how much was actually used of that overlay and how much of it just lapsed into undesignated funds?
We would,
So
yes.
Yeah, so Jack, I'd have to go back and do some research on that. We could come up with that, but I think it's safe to say that, as Rob said, our abatements are typically pretty low, so the vast majority of that does lapse into the undesignated fund.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, does anyone else have anything? All right, seeing none, I'll make a motion that we accept the tax assessor's recommendation that we keep the mill rate stable for one more year.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none. Dan,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Ernie? Yes. Rick?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses.
All right.
Thanks for making time for us tonight, Rob.
Not a problem. I'm sorry I didn't get there. I was just walking out the door when I got the text from Anthony, so I think it worked out good. I'm sure Anthony is giving this in your packet, but we have the mill rate. I mean, the commitment paper is done at that mill rate, so you guys can come in and sign them whenever you can. Commitment is tonight because you guys voted on it. Nick's going to go ahead and implement everything tomorrow. So, the only thing we'll be waiting for is the printers that get the bills to the people. So we're good to go.
And then we need to all, just so everybody's clear, we have to actually sign these in person at the town
Correct.
office.
Correct.
That's correct. And so if we'll have them at the office, and if anyone needs me to bring them to you, I'd be happy to do that.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night, Rob.
You too. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll take a motion to untable the discussion about the remote meeting policy.
So be it.
Have a second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're back to the remote meetings policy.
Yeah. So I was explaining that the MMA and the AG's office seem to be taking a pretty liberal view of when a decision maker can participate remotely in a board or committee meeting. I had an opportunity to talk with Dan about this, and certainly want Dan to weigh in, but he says that, and I think I'll let Dan speak for himself, but the bill sponsor didn't mean for it to be interpreted quite as widely as the lawyers seem to be doing. And so he did go through he liked the policy that was drafted by the town of Orono, and suggested perhaps adopting that with some changes. And so I've redlined those changes, which are part of the packet that I sent out this afternoon. And I'll let Dan say anything he may want to about this.
Yeah, what I did is I went back to the state and started asking all of the different advisors that we have over there how it was supposed to be interpreted. The bill sponsor left it vague because MMA was right after him, to try to leave it as vague as possible. The other people on the committees that voted for it, a lot of them had different interpretations on how strict it was supposed to be. Some of them thought it was supposed to be fairly strict. Some were in the middle. I've also heard from people, because they're getting a lot of questions from towns like us. And they're actually, some of them are even looking at going back and tightening up the language on this, because it's been open for so much interpretation. I looked at a lot of the examples, the ones that Anthony had set out. Orono did a good job on theirs. I did make some recommendations, but again, they're just recommendations to try to keep it so that there's a lot of reasons that you can participate remotely, but also to not really abuse what a lot of the people that voted for it at the state didn't want to see happen, which was basically being absent for no really good reason, substantive reason. So that's basically what I see.
And so the language that you put in on the first page specifying what are allowed and what aren't allowed, this is based on your understanding of what the bill's
Well,
Design wanted.
it's based on talking to 5 or 6 different people that were working on the committees and how some of them interpreted it and some, so like, again, this is kind of in the middle of the road. Some of them interpreted it like MMA and said, yeah, you can be absent for anything, which really is pushing it because the language does actually a little tighter than that. And then some of it that didn't want any remote participation unless it was for a medical issue or an emergency, period. So I just made some recommendations to come up with something in the middle. And basically, more I think of it too, I think there ought to be a paragraph that if something else does come up, it can be brought to the full select board to either vote on allowing it or not allowing it.
Because at this point, it's left to the chair, the select board chair, to make that decision.
No, basically, when I looked at the thing, the way Orono had it, it was the select board chair to interpret it. The normal committee chairs, I have no problem with that. With the select board, everybody in the select boards has equal power. So what would happen is if, say, I was going to be absent within 12 hours, at the very minimum, 12 hours of the meeting, I'd have to let the chair know. The chair would contact the rest of the select board members and decide through consensus whether it's an allowable absence.
So Barbara, in the copy that I sent out this afternoon, that's the highlighted section at the top of page 2.
Right, where it says in consultation with.
Yes.
Okay. So does in consultation with mean that everybody, is that meaning it's by consensus?
I would say yes, we can change the wording, but I think it needs to be a consensus. So 3 out of the 5
Okay,
that say it's all right.
okay. Yeah, I just wasn't clear about what exactly that meant in consultation with.
So, and then are we saying that if members of the public wanted, they're like, oh, there's a board meeting, it's Tuesday night, there's a board meeting, let me chime in. And then they have something that they want to bring forward during public comment, that we're saying they can't do that remotely if they
no,
haven't
no.
notified us
No.
12
the
hours
pub-
prior to the meeting that we to do so.
No, the public has remote access no matter what. That's the way the law is
No,
written.
it says any member of a public body who wishes to participate remotely shall at least 24 hours, but not less than 12 hours prior to the meeting, notify the chair and staff assigned to support the public body of his or her desire to do so. And
No,
the reasons and
the
facts.
public body, according to state law, is elected or appointed officials.
Yeah, so that would be our board and committee members. Is the public bodies are not to be confused with the legislative body, which would be our citizenry.
Yeah, our citizen basically is the legislative body of the town. Citizens can, the way the law was written, citizens can have the right to, if we're offering the remote meetings, they have the right to be able to do it either way.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it doesn't preclude us from having hybrid meetings where citizens can join in and engage remotely.
It's either or, yes. If they want to come to the town building, they're allowed there. If they want to do it just from remotely, they're allowed there.
And I mean, I think this makes sense because, you know, the remote meetings have only started within the last year. And, you know, there's been a long tradition of in-person meetings. So, you know, I think to have that be the rule and then have exceptions to it, I think is, you know, a good policy at this point. Otherwise, we could all go to Florida for the winter.
Yeah, which would make it kind of awkward, and that's one of the discussions that I had over at the state, because once with these remote meetings, whether we show up at the town office or not, Anthony would have to be there and have people, allow people in for a remote meeting. Because they're allowed to either do it in person or remotely. We can't tell them they can't do it in person. So if for some reason we all decided not to show up, it kind of messes up Anthony's evening.
Well, and maybe we need to consider the policy that if travel is dangerous, that we don't have the option of a remote meeting. It's either in person or canceled, because, you know,
Yeah, and that's something we're gonna, I'm not sure. That's
any
something
more
we
than I
might,
would ask, you know, one.
yeah, we may have to check with MMA, because if we advertise a meeting, I don't know if we can do it just remotely if we've advertised it.
Yeah. So here's,
But I thought that was addressed from the MMA.
it
that-
was, let me read that portion of the MMA legal opinion. It reads, concerning snowstorms, they could possibly be considered emergency situations that require an entirely remote meeting. A severe snowstorm may inhibit travel even across town and may require a meeting via remote means. I think the board would also have to consider whether postponement would be more appropriate. I think this would depend on the urgency of the agenda items for the meeting. Remember, however, that the law requires that an in-person location be provided unless there is an emergency. For that reason, I think the snowstorm would have to be severe and the agenda items important in order to justify a fully remote meeting. I tend to think the exception for emergencies and urgent issues is meant to apply to situations where it is not possible for anyone to be there in person and not possible for the public to be given an in-person option. The board has the option of having some members physically present and maintaining an in-person option for the public. By excusing a few board members to attend remotely, that is likely the preferred course of action. So in short, what the MMA attorney is saying is that unless it's a very severe snowstorm and there's something that on the agenda that has to be attended to that night, her recommendation is that we postpone the meeting. But I will say for every agenda that we put out, because we're going to be having hybrid meetings, we're obviously going to include, you know, the address of the town office for people who want to attend in person, but we're also going to include the Zoom link for anyone from the public who wants to participate remotely. So if for some reason we need to, if we have a severe snowstorm and we got to take care of something that night, that Zoom link will already be a posted link that anyone can join in on.
Okay.
Jack has his hand up, Melanie.
So how come I can't see Jack's hand up? I'm sorry.
If
Jack, I'm not able to see where I'm at if you have your hand up, so. But go ahead and chime in, Jack.
I'll let you know.
in reading this, I think it's a sound thing to do. But I do think that where a lot of people in town are potentially involved in this, be they the select board or committee heads or committee members or people who want to speak to the select board for any reason. I would suggest you at least consider adopting this as a set of guidelines for the start, rather than as a hard and fast policy of from the start. And
That's what I was thinking.
Worked out of it, give the townspeople a chance to digest it, and then adopt it or some revision as a policy when that process has run its course.
Well, there is one issue with that, and that is that the law does require, before we meet remotely, that we do have a policy in place that's been approved by the board. So,
And I honestly, quite frankly, I'm frustrated with the state throwing that down when there were no guidelines until a couple of weeks ago. And then they're like, you have to have this in place by the 1st of August. And, you know, so I feel like we can have a policy that we give them that says we have a policy in place. But I feel like we should somehow be reserving the right that we then can update the policy if need be. You know, maybe the state needs to say this is a 6-month policy, and then if you need to make revisions, you're allowed to, as long as they fall within the overall guideline.
Yeah, remember, Melanie, we write the policies. We adopt the policy, so we can change it next month if you want to change it to a new policy and re-vote on it. Same thing with, you know, employment policies. It's a policy. So it really is a guideline.
Right. I just want to make sure we're not bound by something by law that
I don't think so. I think it just has to have
we may
something in
need-
writing.
All right, we'll make a motion then that we adopt the policy put forth. If
Well,
there's,
yeah, so one other thing, Melanie. So remember, the law also requires that we have a public hearing, and so that we have that public hearing scheduled for the 20th. So tonight was just sort of to get a policy in order that we can present to the public on the 20th. So after the public hearing is when you'll
so
get a
I
chance. to
make a
vote
motion
on it.
that we move this policy forward for the public hearing on Tuesday.
With the language revisions that we just talked about that Anthony
With
was
the
taking
language
notes on.
revisions. Yes. Yes.
Second that.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Ricky,
No.
Barbara,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ernie? Yes. All right, 4 yeses, 1 no. Do you want to chat about your no, Ricky, or just?
Oh, you probably don't want to hear what I want to say because, you
We
know,
always do.
I just don't understand how the state comes up with another law. Another law. You know what? Why aren't they going by what the participation's been in these meetings? I mean, just the numbers are numbers are here. They're just crazy. I don't understand how they can dictate what we got to do. I know a group right now that is going to refuse to do it and see what happens. They're going to challenge it. I wish I was in that group because I'd be 100% with them. I think this is ridiculous. They must have too much time on their hands or something to come up with this stuff. That's it.
All right, you're off your soapbox.
Well, Ricky, the
All right, next-
reason they came up with this, Ricky, is they want the public to still be able to zoom in 100% if they want to. But a lot of the state, they want the board members and legislature and everybody else back in person. That's why they came up with this.
But if you listen to the news on TV, which I hate to do, the numbers are going back up in this. We're going to be out on this again. This is what kind of bugs me. You know what? This is not done. This virus thing is not over. So, got to think about this. But whatever. If everybody wants to do it, it's fine. Then, like I said, I got to make a decision what I want to do.
Well, and I hope that, the rest of the board is considering what I had said at the last meeting, that if we're going back to in-person, that I understand we're following state guidelines, but I want for us to still put our own parameters in place. I feel strongly about each of us having our own space and maintaining distance between us and the folks beside us, because I feel like we are going to start, we're already being affected in Maine with this Delta variant. And, I feel like any steps that we can take to keep ourselves as safe as we feel comfortable. You know, and I guess we have to decide that as a board. But if we don't want to do it that way, my seat is going to be 6 feet away, just so you all know.
But I think this policy, even as it's written here, does give someone permission to stay home if their health, if they feel their health is jeopardized, because it says circumstances in which physical presence is not practical may include illness, other physical condition. So if there is someone whose health is compromised, then that person, I think, the way this reads, can certainly feel comfortable. You know, if it's a committee member or a select board member, that person can certainly feel comfortable coming via Zoom.
I saw that and I understand that. But I've been on this board a long time and I've never seen as many people participate in this than anything else. I mean, we've had 38 and 40 people on at a time. We've never had that in a board meeting. Tell you that. Unless it was a town meeting and we might have 75.
But they still can Zoom in. It's just, we're the only ones who have to be there.
I know. I just think it's ridiculous. Why, what difference is that gonna make? That's what I don't understand. I guess I don't understand what difference it's gonna make that's all sitting in one room with 3 people sitting in the audience. It doesn't even make sense. But that's okay.
Well, it's a policy. We can change it if it doesn't work.
That's what we need, another policy.
As long as we have someone to enforce it.
That's what you're talking about. I want to see it enforced.
I know, I'm just teasing. All right, so next up, we have discussion and consideration of a policy regarding requested signage and striping.
Make that motion, we open it.
Thank you. A second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, that item is open for discussion.
Would you like me to talk, Melanie?
Sure.
Okay, so this is the same policy that we brought to you guys before, but the roads committee has had a bite at the apple now. And they suggested 2 things. First of all, they feel like if someone requests the striping initially, which is, you know, I talked with Lucas Striping, it'd be about a $25 cost per home, that they should also be responsible for the cost of restriping, because obviously you have to do this every few years in order to keep the hashtags or hash marks and everything visible. So that's a recommendation, an added recommendation from the roads committee, and that's highlighted in the updated policy that you have, or proposed policy that you have before you. Also, and this is, you know, this sort of falls in line with the estimate that I provided from Lucas Striping, is that there's also a recommendation from the roads committee that we add double yellow striping at the top of that hill on the west road, near where Jack lives and where the communications tower sits, simply because it sort of constitutes a blind hill similar to the ones that we have on the Knowles Road and the Horse Point Road. And so the cost of doing that double yellow striping is just 10.5 cents per mile. I'm not exactly sure what the exact length of that would be, but the Knowles Road hill striping, for instance, cost $136. So it's not prohibitively expensive.
If the residents pay for the striping down in the village, the next time it goes to be done, what happens when, say, a resident has sold their house? Are we going to go around to every single one and have them commit to paying it before we have it done every time?
I think we would almost have to, Dan. And I don't know that we're going to have a lot of that down there. I mean, we will obviously have some interested parties, but I've talked to others and just asked them, hey, the select board is considering this. Is this something you'd be interested in? and they're not. And so it may be just a handful of people who want to do this.
And so I guess my check too is the cost what it is because Lucas is already going to be in town doing the striping. So if 3 months from now, someone requests striping and the cost generally, the majority of the cost is borne by getting the contractor to town. So it's $25 a side right now, but if there's a request from a taxpayer that they come in 3 months, that cost is different. Or the alternative is that requests need to be made in writing. And if striping is requested, or no parking zones or something that involves paint on the pavement, then that will only be done in conjunction the town's routine striping. What are
I
your
did
thoughts
not
on
ask.
that?
I did not ask Lucas Striping if the cost was related to them
Or
just
do we
doing that as
if
their.
somebody requests that we put it, it would come.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is I did not ask Lucas Striping if the $25 cost
Okay,
was just
so
really.
we don't feel.
Really well done, that Senate, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Oh, I
Yeah, we're
think
having
you
some-
and
You're
what's
slow,
that?
Melanie.
Yeah, internet cable.
yeah, I think we're having some connectivity issues.
Thanks.
But I will say that Lucas Striping, I didn't specifically ask them this, but I feel certain that the $25 cost is they would take care of that when they're in town doing the other $3,000 plus work for us. I can't imagine they're going to come to town simply to earn $25 to stripe one home.
That's what I'm thinking. That's why I'm wondering if we need, I see you, Tom. To see if we need to incorporate that somehow into the policy.
It doesn't say anything about the actual price in the policy. So,
It does,
Yeah,
Just-
and I would be reluctant to put the price in there simply because it could change from year to year.
it could change, or if somebody really wants to have the striping and they don't want to wait for a reduced cost when he's going to be in town for something else, they may just want to go ahead and pay 2 or 3 times or 5 times as much to get it done.
okay, Tom, you had something?
This may have already been addressed, but if even with all this policy and striping, somebody parks in front of, for example, Bill's driveway and totally blocks him, is there a policy that he can call such and such towing or whatever and have the vehicle removed?
No.
We don't- we don't have a parking ordinance.
I mean, I think, that may be a deficiency of this whole process.
Well, it can't be any worse than them buying their own signs, which they've done now, and putting cones up. And we did explain that this isn't gonna be a law enforcement issue, that it's more like guidance, reminding people not to park there. Unlike if you park in front of a fire hydrant, there's a law there that prohibits that.
So I mean, and just a general question, if somebody's blocking my driveway, I mean, should I logically call the sheriff's department?
I would
Suppose you
say
could.
yes. I would say yes, because again, Belgrade doesn't have a parking ordinance, so we can't enforce anything.
Okay, thank you.
With the Pulsipers driveway, isn't it not that the driveway itself is actually being blocked, but that the sight lines are being blocked. They could still get in and out of their driveway, but how safely is the question, right?
Right.
Well, I'm used to Massachusetts drivers, so parking across somebody's driveway would not be an unusual happening.
Well, we have plenty of Massachusetts
did you
states in
want-
the village in the summer.
Oh, Bill, you're on mute.
Oh, you're muted, Bill. Hang on. Can you unmute yourself, Bill?
So we can't hear you.
Anthony, can you unmute him?
Yes, how's that?
There we go. We can hear you
I think I
now.
just unmuted it.
Did.
You did. What would you like to say?
Well, the biggest problem that we have is trying to back out, and when there's people parked on within the 10 feet, it's impossible to see if there's any vehicles coming from one way or another. I've put some cones out, and so far, people have respected it.
Good.
But when all of the engineering meetings that we had, it was pointed out that there was going to be no parking within 10 feet of either side of a driveway. And there was conversation at the time that it would be marked out as such. So we would like to see that done. Thank you.
You're welcome. We got you covered, Bill, and we want you to be safe getting out of your driveway. We kind of like you.
We need to do it. Try it. Let's try it and see what happens. So I'll make a motion. We go ahead and try it. Let's see what happens.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, moved and seconded.
Are we just paying for it or what are we doing, Bo?
but if we're approving the policy provides for the requesting party to cover the cost.
Yeah, but the motion I just heard wasn't approving a policy. it was
That's not
painting
a
the lines.
problem.
Oh. So the motion is the approval of the road sign striping request policy.
Rick?
Yes,
Okay, and it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Dan,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Ricky,
yes.
Ernie? Yes. All right, 5 yeses.
And so do you guys want to add the hill on the west road to the striping estimate that's part of your packet?
Yeah, we should take that up separately. All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve the road committee's recommendation for, hold on, where's my, striping the Knowles Road?
No, it's adding, so the Knowles Road is already striped. It would simply be adding double yellow striping on the West Road Hill.
Okay. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just wonder where this is gonna stop. We just keep doing this a little bit at a time. I can tell you some other roads you probably ought to have it on it, but I just wonder when this is gonna stop. I don't see it happen. But whatever.
Well, I think we did put the stops to it, Ricky, because we had talked about striping the whole town and said no.
I
Sorry.
understand, but we're
Bruce?
doing it piecemeal now.
Yeah, I mean, that hill is not even half as dangerous as a hill on the Wings Mills Road, since the road is 2 feet narrower than what it was before. You can't even meet 2 vehicles on that corner without going off the road. And that should be done before they do the West Road if they're gonna piecemeal this. I requested this several months ago at a board meeting.
But I feel like that hill before my house on the West Road is rather dangerous because
Yeah.
every
I-
single year there's an
I feel it-
accident there.
Right. I feel if you're gonna start doing these hills and this and that, pick out your most dangerous ones, do them. That one's not that dangerous. It's not a curve in a hill. I mean, most of the others have got curves in the hills, and that's just a straight up and over. That's just my opinion.
So would you recommend a blind hill sign instead of the double striping?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd throw that at you guys. I think if you're gonna do double striping on hills, on that, like that hill, you need to go back by your house. The corner, the hill right there coming up from the Dunn Road up towards your place. The Wings Mills Road, that one hill there. I mean, you could go on and on and on, like Ricky said. I think you guys ought to set a policy that what we got, or go through and, figure out what you need to do and then do all of them at the same time, not just start doing them. So I can tell you, that one's not the worst hill and the worst place to be striped in town of Belgrade. There's a lot more places, a lot worse than that.
So when you made the request of the road committee, did they,
I did to
because
the
I don't
committee.
remember that coming forward to,
No, it was in a board meeting. It was talking about striping. It was not that
Oh.
long ago.
all right, so it was in a select board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think the striping that we have now, some of what was added was after there was, Jack, you had done it. You had gone out as part of the roads committee and sort of mapped the roads. And that's how we came with a few more that we wanted striping on. Am I correct on that? Oh, I can't hear you, Jack. Hang on, Jack, can you unmute yourself?
There. It's not that
Yes.
I went out and mapped the town for striping. The question arose a while back, are there any other places in town that could use striping for safety reasons? And I pointed out the West Road Hill as a possibility because I likened it a lot to the Knowles Road Hill. It may not be quite as severe, but people really go fast over that, and they are blind until they're over the crest or nearly over the crest. And I'm just waiting for it to happen. But that's because I know the area. I live here and I know that, and I know what happens or doesn't happen and what goes on over that hill. Other places in town may deserve it more. I'm not sure.
Well, that's why I said when folks were complaining about the rumble strip in the middle of the West Road. So far, since that rumble strip, we haven't had an accident by my driveway, but every year there's one. And
No,
some have been,
If that's a
bad.
criterion, we'd have to wait for an accident.
Right. All right, well, there's a motion and a second on the striping on the West Road. Is there any more discussion on it? All right, seeing none, I'll call the vote. Dan?
No.
Okay, Barbara?
No,
Ricky?
Oh,
Bernie?
Yes.
All right. 4 no's, that's a no from me.
I think what we need to go do is go back and just look at all the roads and see if there's something we're gonna do, we need to do it all at once.
yeah, I agree.
Well, and maybe we can see if we can compile some data on where the accidents are in Belgrade. And maybe that gives us a better idea of where we are looking at some blind spots that if we don't travel those roads every day, we may not know. But law enforcement and fire and rescue are certainly gonna have some ideas for us, I would assume. And maybe that's as good
If
as
I may,
starting.
I question why we're even debating this. I mean, this is a roads committee issue. It seems to me that, you know, Bruce raises a good point of a dangerous spot in town, and, you know, it should go to the roads committee. They should be the ones to sort of evaluate this and come up with a plan and present it. If they think the West Road needs to be done or any other road in town, then, you know, give a good reason for it and vote on it. But it really isn't our place to sit here and debate it, I don't think. Because it, you know, there's Jack lives on the West Road. He raises a good point that maybe it needs to be striped. Bruce lives in his area where there's a good point to have it striped. You know, let the roads committee decide. And you know, I agree. I don't think every road needs to be striped, but certainly where there's safety issues, we ought to pay attention to it.
So I will take this back to the roads committee, but we need to move ahead with this year's striping program because otherwise we're going to get past the season where that can be done. So we'll just restripe what we have right now. And then the roads committee will do a survey of any other areas that they think may need to be restriped for you guys to consider next year.
Sounds good. Mr. Pulsifer, you'll get some striping and some no parking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My mother
Alright.
thanks you, my father thanks you, and I thank you.
All right, does anybody else have anything else for this evening's special meeting? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
so be it.
Second,
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good night, everyone.